Hello! Today we are going to talk about flower spikes. Everything that you must know: if you can cut your flower spike after blooming, if you should keep your flower spike, if the flower spike can produce many baby plants if you just cut it and place in a moss or in an enclosure space, how to pot keikis that comes from the flower spike, and all this sort of stuff. If you find this subject very interesting, if you're curious about it, please hang with me, and I hope you enjoy this type of subject. As you can see here, I have a beautiful Phalaenopsis that I just bought in my local supermarket. When I looked to this color combo, I said, oh my gosh, I really like this plant. On top of it, it's very fragrant, but the downside is that a big Phalaenopsis. Usually I go for the smaller ones because of space, but I'm so happy with this one. Look how beautiful and gorgeous it is. So I decided to talk about spikes today because I said, why not? I remember watching many videos when I started cultivating orchids about flower spikes. So I want to cover some of the subject today, at least the base of it. Phalaenopsis, especially the ones that we find in supermarkets and flower shops, the hybrids. The hybrid and many species as well, where these hybrids come from. I'm not talking about summer blooming Phalaenopsis specifically here, although they react a little bit different. I'm talking about ones that produce these long flower spikes, not the one that produce short flower spikes. So today we're going to talk about this Phalaenopsis with long flower spikes. Flower spikes where the flowers come from, as the name suggests. So every season, what happened with the Phalaenopsis, these big ones, the ones that you find in supermarket, usually when the temperature drops, you will notice on the base of your Phalaenopsis something coming through that's not root. That's a flower spike. That's a brand new flower spike that's coming out, and it will grow, and from the nodes it will produce new buds, new branches, and will give you a beautiful show. We do have some Phalaenopsis in the supermarkets and garden centers even at summertime, because they are artificially induced to bloom. They are kept in place where the temperature drops, and then these plants will produce flower spikes. And with these plants in bloom, usually that's how we see them in supermarkets and flower shops. They don't sell plants that are not blooming, or they will only sell in the discounted sessions, the ones that are finished blooming. But usually the ones that you find there is when you have a mature flower spike full of branches and buds and blooms. If you have a healthy Phalaenopsis, usually, as I mentioned before, the spike or these spikes, they can have multiple spikes, will come from the base of your plant, the base of the stem. That's the central axis of your Phalaenopsis. If you notice that your Phalaenopsis has a flower spike that is coming from the center of your plant, that's called a terminal spike. Terminal spikes are not good because they damage the crown, they damage the stem, the middle of your Phalaenopsis. That's where new leaves have to come from. So if you do have a terminal spike, what you should do is keep this spike, and fingers crossed, your plant will produce some baby plants. If the plant doesn't produce any baby plant, it will probably die. So if you see one plant at the supermarket that has a terminal spike, don't buy it, because the plant may not survive. If you end up with one at home, there are many hybrids at the supermarket that they tend to produce terminal spikes. So if you end up with one at home, I would advise you to keep the spike, because it may produce some babies, some keikis. So what are keikis? Keikis are baby Phalaenopsis, or baby plants, baby orchids. They are identical to the mother plant. They are asexually produced, which means that it's basically the mother plant producing a new individual that is exactly the same as the mother plant. We have on these spikes nodes, and the nodes, most of them are inactive nodes, which means that they will not produce flowers or keikis. But we do have some active nodes. It's from these active nodes that the flowers come from. And also from these active nodes, if we have a concentration of hormones in there, growth hormones, the plant can produce a keiki, like this one here, can produce baby plants from these nodes. As you can see here, I have 1, 2, 3 baby plants coming from 3 different nodes. So this means that in these nodes there was a concentration of hormones that the plant used to produce new baby plants. You can also buy cake pastes. There are places where you can find it. I have never tried, so I can't give you my experience. And you can administrate a little dose of the cake paste on the node of your plant, and you may have a new cake. Now let's talk about after blooming care, shall we? There are many people on the internet that have different opinions about keeping the flower spike or cutting the flower spike. I'm going to use some information that I found on the American Orchid Society. They say that if you keep the same stem, the same flower spike, branching and branching and branching over and over again, the flower spike can become a little bit ungainly and the flowers can come smaller and smaller and not as bright and vivid and beautiful as the previous ones. That's why many people decide to cut the flower spike. So when your flowers are fading, you go to the base of your plant and cut the flower spike. It will be fine. Your plant will rebloom the next season. These are seasonal plants, which means that they bloom every season. So around winter time, they will push through a new flower spike. There are people that decide to keep the flower spikes because this flower spike, they can branch out. The nodes that they didn't produce any flower, they can branch out and produce a new one. So for example, on this planting here, I can see that all of the nodes already produce the flower spikes. So when this Phalaenopsis is completely gone, all of these flowers are gone, I won't probably have new branches because all of the nodes, they were already used. But most of the Phalaenopsis, they have some nodes. They can become active. They haven't branched yet. So from these nodes, if they become active, you probably have maybe 2 months later, you have a completely new branch of Phalaenopsis blooms for you. I have a video here where I talk about it and I show you one case where I decided to keep and wait for it to rebranch, and I have a beautiful bloom because it's one of my blooming wet flower in my indoor garden. I knew that it was very dehydrated, the flowers were spent very quickly, so I wait for the rebranching to have a new set of blooms, which is great. But every year I prefer to cut the flower spike from the base and wait for the next season. But that's a personal call. There are many people that do it. There are many people that decide to keep the plant branching and branching all over again. It's up to you. We do have active nodes, so Phalaenopsis are capable of keep producing new branches, just to let you know. But now I'm going to talk to you about some disease and problems with Phalaenopsis. So as I mentioned before, you can cut the flower spike after blooming or you can keep the flower spike. However, there are a few things that you have to consider. If you just bought a plant from the supermarket and your plant is very limp, dehydrated, sad, I do have a video where I talk to you about common warning signs that you can find in your orchids. If you want to watch it, it's very good because it gives you some tips. But if your plant is showing many warning signs and is pretty dehydrated, sad, you can see that the roots are not healthy, the leaves are not healthy, I would advise you to cut the flower spike because the plant won't focus its energy in producing a new branch of flowers, a new set of blooms, but instead will save energy to create new leaves and new roots that are very important for the survival of your plant. I have a video where I've done that, where I cut the flower spikes and I repot the plant. I also link you down below, but that's what I would advise you to do. Cut the flower spike, let this plant regain energy to rebloom in the next season when it will be much healthier. So the flower spike can affect the health of your plant if your plant is blooming non-stop while the plant is not producing new roots or new leaves and is pretty stressed. In this case, I think if you want to save your plant, I would cut the flower spike. Another thing that's in a case where I keep the flower spike and the plant's not healthy is when I have some issues with my crown. I talked about it in my warning sign video. Or when I have a stem rot, that's another disease that affects the main stem, the axis of your Phalaenopsis. So if I notice that my top leaves start to fall, or if I notice that my plant is losing leaves, and I can see that the stem has any brown dark spot, things that I treated, but I can see that's growing, so I'm gonna probably lose the stem of my plant or lose the crown of my plant, and then I may probably lose my plant. The best way for me to propagate this plant is through keikis, because if my plant decides to give a baby plantlet, probably I will be able to save this cake and pot it up, and I won't lose my Phalaenopsis. In this case, I always keep the flower spike, because my flower spike can definitely branch out and decide to give me keikis. The plant can give you some basal keikis, but in some cases, the stem is so badly affected that it's not possible to create any basal keikis, that the baby plants that come from the base, but it will give you many baby plants like this one. I don't have any plants anymore. You have some roots inside, and the flower spikes feeding the babies here, while the babies grow its roots. So in this case, I would definitely keep the flower spike. So the last thing that I will cover here before I repot my keikis, that's something that we will do together as well. I hope you stay with me. So the last thing that I will cover is something that I saw on the internet when I started collecting orchids. That was more than 2 years ago. And I remember the video is very popular, and I remember thinking, oh, that's easy. That you can cut the flower spike, you know, and find the active nodes, the nodes that haven't bloomed yet. You cut your flower spikes, you basically get, I don't remember exactly, but you get like a glass, fill it with moss, pour some water in it, and then you stick all the flower spikes you cut in sections on the moss, close it and create like a mini greenhouse, and then you are definitely creating many baby plants, and that's a way for you to transform one orchid in many orchids. And I remember watching the video and saying, oh, I'm gonna try. So I tried. I cut many flower spikes, many sections. I don't remember exactly how many, but I did that with a few different orchids. Wait and wait and wait. In the end, it became like a real greenhouse because the moss produced it. I don't know how, but I did have some ferns in there as well. After 2 years, really became a miniature greenhouse. How many orchids I got from that? I did get one. So I can't say that it doesn't work, because it would be a lie. Actually, it does. I do have one baby orchid here, but after 2 years, look at the size of that. So if you're very patient and want to try, it's a fun experiment. I don't know if you like experiencing things. It's fun, but most likely, you won't get any new baby plants. It's possible that you get one. I got one. Or maybe two, I don't know. Let me know if you have tried and if you got any orchids, any baby orchids with that. Anyway, I tried, but I remember the video saying that, oh, from one spike you get many orchids. That's not actually true, because the plant needs to have energy, hormones, and everything to grow. And when you place it in this environment, in nature, it's very different, because you have fungi and bacteria. They act together to make your plant actually grow or produce new babies, and the babies to survive and all that. But I did got one. I took some close-up pictures. I will place it here as well, because with the camera you can't actually see the spike, but it's possible to see the spike in here. I have a new root. There is a new leaf coming here. To be honest, orchids in nature, they take around 6 years to become mature plants. So they are very slow growers. And when you have a baby, that's what will happen to you as well. They grow slowly. So it's not like magically you're gonna have Phalaenopsis that will bloom for you. If you decide to try this experiment, I can tell you that will take a while for you to have mature plants like this one, but it is possible to have at least one baby plant. I may try it, maybe in the future, to show you what happens. I don't know, if you want I can try. But yeah, I've tried that. I didn't have a YouTube channel before, so I don't have footage of it. I do have one baby plant here to talk to you. It's interesting since we're talking about spikes and what spike can do and can't do. So nature is incredible, isn't it? And finally, the last thing that I want to tell you today, and that we will do together, hopefully I'll do that very quick because these videos are already long. What to do with these baby keikis. I do have a video where I talk about it, explain the size of the roots, how long they have to be for you to be able to repot them individually. I can see that my plants, the roots are not alive anymore, so I don't know how long this plant will be here. So what I want to do with you today, is remove these keikis and pot them. I hope you find it fun. To start, I don't know if I pot them separately or if I should pot them all together. I was thinking that since they are siblings, I may pot them together and create my own. I think it would be really nice, huh? To have 3 Phalaenopsis together, and then they will be able to bloom together, and then I'll have a beautiful bloom display. What do you think about it? Should I do it? I think I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna pot them 3 together. It's the first time that I do it, to create like a community potting. I know they don't have any disease, they are baby plants, they work together. So I will create a community pot of Phalaenopsis. Their flowers, they are pyloric, so it's really, really nice. And it's a small Phalaenopsis, so although they will grow, but they will not become massive Phalaenopsis. And I'm so happy. Let's try it together, shall we? So now we will repot this keiki. So the first thing that I'm gonna do here is I have an sterilized pair of pruners. So you cut the flower spike like so. Okay, there we go. It's free from its mother plant. I have here my usual mix. That's some sphagnum moss and bark chips. That's how I repot most of my plants. If you want to know how I repot Phalaenopsis, I will link videos down below for you. What I'm gonna do now, I have to free them up to make sure that they will fit on this pot. So they are attached to the main spike here, and I don't wanna remove them completely from the spike, not all of them. So this one is on the top here. I don't know if it's possible to see, but this one, it's on the top. So with this one, I will safely do like something like that. Clean cut. It's free, but I still have a tiny, to have a piece of the spike here. Still able to fit the plant a little bit. It's very small, so it will die out quickly, but I prefer to keep them, disturb the root system. The other two, they have longer roots, which is good. So the one, it's also in one branch. So I have this one, that's the bigger one, is on this branch here. So what I'm gonna do, just cut the branch out. So again, I free another keiki. There is some dried flower spikes around them. And then I have the third one here. This one is the luckiest because it can have all of these spike for itself. I won't remove them from the spike, as I mentioned already. So just making some clean cuts in here. The spikes can definitely feed this plant, so that's what I'm gonna do. I don't need all of these, so I'm gonna remove that. But yeah, so I have here 1, 2, and 3 keikis, and I'm gonna pot them together. So to start, I place a little bit of moss on the bottom of this pot, and then I will add lots of bark in here. The bark helps to give some air. I don't have enough bark, but that's fine. Just layering moss and bark. As you can see here, I have the last layer of moss. I'm gonna make like a cushion to accommodate my little ones. So now I will place one here. Let's see how they will fit, if they will all fit here. So I have some longer roots. I don't want to disturb the root system, so let's see if it will fit. They were growing facing different directions because they were attached to the flower spike. So now I will just make sure they are all in contact with my median. This one is the longest one, so it's a little bit difficult to place it there, but almost, yeah, it will be fine. So I'm gonna keep adding more moss because I wanna have it very fluffy around these roots. I don't wanna disturb the roots. These are baby plants. I want them to have a happy life, if that's possible. So there we go. A little bit more of moss here and a little bit moss there, and that's it. All of them are here. A little bit wobbly because I have 3 plants. It's fine. I think they will be fine. And then I'm gonna, oh, forgot, place some beads of slow release fertilizer. Not a lot. They are tiny plants. They don't need a lot right now, but they do need fertilizer. Phalaenopsis are heavy feeders, so very important. And the last layer, I will add some bark in here. And that's it, actually. I do have a pot full of beautiful orchids. Let's finish here, topping up with bark. Okay, that's done. So here is the mother plant. You can use the tag, but I won't forget that this one is the baby plant because I don't have 3 Phalaenopsis pots together. I have 2 though, but I don't have 3. And the 2 that I have, I'm not sure if the mother plant is still viable. But these ones, I know that they are all viable and they will grow nicely on top of this. I'm so happy on top of this pot. I'm glad that I've done this video. The structures in our plants, they're all very important. Although flower spikes are not vital if we are growing them indoors. But as you could see, they are vital if the plant is sick. They are vital in nature because it's how plants produce their plumes, and then they can reproduce themselves sexually, and as you could see, asexually as well, just creating keikis. So they are vital in terms of reproducing the plants. In nature, there are species, but here we have hybrids, so it's a little bit different. But that's it. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button and leave a comment down below. I would love to hear from you, and I'll keep you posted and update you on my community pot. That's it. I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.